guys, and welcome back to Buffalo Sports Talk of Western New York. My name is Tom Hastings. This is my partner, Tom Joyce. And guys, let's talk about the Super Bowl years with our beloved Buffalo Bills. From 1990 to 1993, the Bills did something that no other team did before and no other team has done since. They went to 4 Super Bowls in a row. Tommy, what an amazing time to be a Bills fan and to be alive and be at those games.
It was. For people old enough to remember those days, they will forever be known as the glory days of the Bills franchise up to this point.
We'll see what happens in the future.
Yeah, but they were a team that was just loaded with talent on both sides of the ball. They had the quarterback, they had the running back, they had the receivers, they had the defensive stars, both in the secondary and in the front line. And it was just a team that captured the imagination of Western New York in a way that no Bills team up to that point had done.
Hey, before we continue on with the show, if I could just ask you really quick to subscribe to this channel. Join our community. We're fans that just love to talk about our Bills and our Sabres and everything to do with Buffalo sports in general. We'd love to have you as part of our community. And the best way to do that is to subscribe to our channel, hit that like button, hit the bell icon so you're notified every time we upload a new video. Our schedule is usually we do our table talk on Mondays, and then Wednesday we hit you with this show here today, Let's Talk. And Let's Talk is basically a show that we get nostalgic and we talk about some great things that happened in the past. We've had some great shows. Last week we did an episode about the National Wrestling Federation, our Buffalo wrestling organization that took place from 1970 to 74. Tommy did a great show on the Buffalo Norsemen, which was a professional hockey team in Buffalo in the 70s that influenced the movie Slapshot. And today we talk about our beloved Buffalo Bills. But if you leave a comment down below, you can give us some suggestions of some shows you think might be interesting and things you'd like us to talk about. And feel free to leave a comment and give us your feelings about these subjects as well. We'd love to hear from you. But let's get right into our Buffalo Bills. We get Jim Kelly. He famously doesn't sign with the team in 1983 when we draft him. Goes to the USFL, breaks records there, but the league closes down, and he finally has to come to the team in 86. And we move on from there. We see the team start to slowly develop. By 87, we're looking decent. We add Cornelius Bennett to the roster. By 88, we get Thurman and a couple other players. It starts looking like a really contending team. We have a great 88 season. We finished 12-4. We play a great playoff game against Houston, loudest up until that point I've ever heard that stadium. And then we lose to Cincinnati in the AFC Championship game. And Cincinnati goes on to losing a great Super Bowl to the San Francisco 49ers. 89 happens, and it starts off really promising with the famous Jim Kelly scoring a touchdown on the last play of the game against Miami. But then we start losing some games that they were expecting us to win, and we become known as the bickering Bills. And what happened was Jim Kelly would call out teammates in the media, and Thurman Thomas happened to be on a sports talk show. And when the host asks what he thinks the problem with the team is, Thurman says quarterback. They end up, it kind of has an explosion. They have to do a press conference and apologize. Bill Polian has the famous quote, "Marv Levy's still our head coach, Jim Kelly's still our quarterback, and if you don't like it, get out of town."
Yeah.
And you could see like pressure building. And it was going to go one way or another. Either the team was going to completely collapse or was going to respond and shine. And they get to the playoffs in that 89 season, and they lose a heartbreaker. They drop
Ronnie Harmon.
But it's also that game against Cleveland was the birth of the K-gun and the no-huddle offense. So come the 1990 season, the Bills are a stacked team.
Yeah.
They have Kelly at quarterback, great backup quarterback in Frank Reich.
Yeah.
In that 89 season, Kelly gets hurt against the Colts, and Frank Reich comes in and wins 3 games in a row for us. It was probably one of the best parts including a really exciting Monday night game against the Rams that went back and forth in the rain on Halloween. I still remember that game like it was yesterday. But 1990 opens against the Colts, and Jeff George, a young rookie quarterback. Bruce Smith and Cornelius Bennett just destroy him. The K-Gun is born, the no huddle, and they just destroy the Colts. And I was at that game with my dad, Tom, and you could just see this is a different team.
Right.
And you just had a feeling this is a team of destiny.
Yeah, it was a team, like I said, it was stacked. And we got to give credit to Bill Polian for building that team.
We should have said that right off the bat.
Yeah.
Without Bill Polian, he was so underappreciated by Ralph Wilson. Ralph ends up firing him. But without Bill Polian, there are no 4 Super Bowls. He just built a monster of a team.
There was no gaps in that team. I mean, you had a fantastic offensive line. Ken Hull, one of the great centers.
Great center. He's the guy, the glue.
History. Yeah, and Will Wilford, and in the secondary, and you had Talley, and you had Odom. It was just a team that just and then
Shane Conlon.
Shane Conlon up front. You had Bruce Smith and
Jeff Wright,
Bennett, and you had Daryl Talley. You go on and on. It was just a team.
Name them all.
And then you had maybe the balancing out one of if not the greatest special teams player of all time, Steve Tasker. So it was a team just built for success. Frank Reich was a backup at that time. Frank Reich probably would have been the starting quarterback in 90% of the teams in the league, and he was our backup. So, it was just a team built for success, and it seemed like the sky was the limit for Bills fans.
I can just close my eyes and just remember so many great games in that season.
Yeah.
Looking back, there's a Denver game where we're getting dominated for the most part of the game. Denver goes for a field goal that would have probably put the game away, and the kick gets blocked, and Cornelius Bennett returns it for a touchdown, like 90 yards. The next play, Elway gets intercepted and returned for a touchdown, and then he fumbles on the next possession on the goal line, and we score another touchdown, like 21 points in a matter of like a minute and a half. An incredible game, and super loud. I mean, the stadium was going crazy. I loved being. I was at that game. I was at a lot of those games in '90. I remember a game against Philadelphia, where we scored 24 points in the first quarter. Yeah. And it was also a game where Randall Cunningham threw like a 98-yard touchdown at the end of the first half. Yeah. We ended up winning that game though. Just another game, a Sunday night game against the Raiders that comes to mind where we're losing, and again. Steve Tasker blocks a punt, and J.D. Williams returns it for a touchdown, and it turns the game around, and we end up winning that. I remember revenging Cleveland, who we lost to in that AFC divisional round in '89. We just destroy them 42-0, get their coach fired in the '90 season. That team just looked like it was destiny. And then a couple weeks ago in the season, they played the New York Giants, and you see Phil Simms go down to an injury, and then a couple plays later, Jim Kelly goes down with an injury. Yeah. And you're thinking to yourself, oh my God, the curse is hitting again. Yeah. Our franchise quarterback is down.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was a game that at the time were featuring 2 Super Bowl contending teams.
Right. And they both lose their quarterback.
And I remember the feeling around Buffalo was, well, we do have Frank Reich, and I think a lot of Bills fans had confidence in
seeing what he did in '89.
Right, but it was Jimbo, and he was our man.
Yeah, I don't think anyone thought we were going to win the Super Bowl with Frank, but we felt that he could get us through the last couple games, which he did. We ended up winning the game against the Giants, and then the next week, even more importantly, we win the AFC East championship in a game in the rain against Miami, where it's Frank Reich against Dan Marino, and they were able to sit. I think Gail Gilbert played quarterback in Week 16 against Washington, and the team ends up 13-3, winning the division,
undefeated at home,
and that leads us to my favorite playoff game, one of my favorite playoff games of all time, especially in that era, against the Miami Dolphins. Jim Kelly makes his return in the snow against Dan Marino, and it's just this back and forth game in the snow. I love the elements. I was at that game. It was an amazing game to be at. We win 44-34. As I said, just back and forth. So many big plays in that game, and seeing it in the snow was just so much fun. And that leads us to the AFC Championship against the Raiders. And Tommy, you were at that game, and let us know how you were feeling.
This still remains the most fun I've ever had at a Bills game. The feeling was electric. The game was over early. Bo Jackson, who was on the Raiders at the time, suffered an injury early in the game, and it seemed like the team never recovered from that. It was a foregone conclusion by halftime, and the stadium for the rest of the game was just an absolute party. The Bills went on to win 51-3, and it seemed like the sky's the limit. And I remember walking out of that stadium in just a feeling of euphoria that this is the team and this is the year.
You know, to put it in perspective, we never thought this is Super Bowl 25, and we never thought that we'd see our Bills in the Super Bowl. It's like it took for so long. But now to put that in perspective, our last Super Bowl run was in Super Bowl 28. They just had Super Bowl 60, and it's been 32 years now since we've made it back to the big game. So it's been even a longer wait, but we'll see what the future holds with our present team now. Hopefully next year. But wow, what a feeling to know we're going to the Super Bowl, and to have it when the Gulf War had just broke out, and there was this sense of patriotism all in the country. And Whitney Houston performs probably the most famous national anthem of all time. And game on, we're playing backup Jeff Hostetler. But unfortunately, we ran into Bill Belichick's defense. And they just had a great scheme, and they also Bill Belichick's offense that they kept us off the field.
They did.
One of the longest drives in Super Bowl history. I remember and Otis Anderson just beat that team up.
He was the MVP of that game.
Yeah, and we end up. Everyone knows wide right. And there isn't a man on that team that blames Norwood. And, you know, I watched that documentary, The Four Falls of Buffalo, and Norwood, you know, it just changed his whole life. He still almost seems like devastated to this day, you know, that's his legacy. But I remember Darryl Talley saying, you know, if I make this tackle, if somebody does this, you know, there were so many plays in that game. Or I remember a big third down conversion. It was like 3rd and 18, and who I can't remember the running back for New York. It wasn't OJ. It was a smaller guy, Dave Megan, I believe it was. It breaks like 5 tackles, and that's where Darryl Talley said, "I make a tackle on that play, and it doesn't come down to this." You know, if they get 5 more yards to make it closer.
You know, in people have to remember that this is a different time. Now, I know younger viewers might be saying 47 yards.
Yeah.
That's a chip shot.
It was
it is a chip shot today. I mean, let's be honest.
And it was on natural grass.
These guys are routinely hitting 50, even 60-yarders today. It's a different kicking game than it was then.
They're different
at that
athletes
time,
now.
47 yards was at the outside of most kickers,
especially
range.
For that kicker. If he hit a 50-yarder, it was a miracle.
You know,
back in those
days. It was a different time, and 47 yards in the NFL at that time was a long field goal.
Yeah, and of course you have to talk about what happened the next day, in town square there in downtown Buffalo, when all those people come to downtown Buffalo to pay tribute to the team. And as I think Marv or someone was speaking, all of a sudden the crowd starts chanting Scotty, and they brought Norwood up and showed him love. It was a great show of class by the Bills Mafia, by the entire city of Buffalo. It was a great show of class and a great moment.
Yeah,
a great moment in sports history.
I was there, and it was a truly amazing thing to be a part of. It gained national news, notoriety around the country and around the world, and it really showed the nature of Bills fans. And it wasn't known as Bills Mafia at the time. It was long before that term was coined.
Right.
But Bills fandom was really something special. And I remember being in the crowd, seeing him come and just to address the crowd as being overwhelmed with emotion.
Amazing moment.
It was really something special to be a part of, and I'm getting emotional just thinking of it.
Right, me too. There was a time when they were more present. This team started feeling like a part of your extended family. There was, ESPN was growing. Chris Berman became a big celebrity around this time, and he loved the Bills. You know, he coined the coin phrase the who else circles the wagons like the Buffalo Bills. You know, and he. You know, you just saw these players. They started having their own talk shows, so you saw them on TV a lot. We would see them out in bars and restaurants all over the Western New York area. They were a party team, and they were very much in the community.
I remember being at Sunset Bay Beach Club and Bruce Smith dancing in the circle with people, and just enjoying himself and loving life at the bar with all the other customers. He was right next to me and smiling with a drink in his hand, and just people would go into the big tree and sit and have a beer with Jim Kelly, and the team was accessible in a way that today modern athletes just aren't.
Right, and you know we've gone this far and we haven't even mentioned Marv Levy's name. He comes to the team in '86, and you know, people say, you know, how could a coach have all this talent and not win a Super Bowl? And I'll counter that with, I don't know another coach that could have handled the egos in that locker room the way that Marv did. Marv was like everybody's dad,
right?
You know, and in the community we all looked up to Marv Levy, and I think he did a fine job with the team. And you know, we talked about Kelly not wanting to come to Buffalo originally, and it was over these years you start seeing him mature, and I think Ken Hull had a big part in that, of settling him down and teaching him some lessons, you know, and Jim started, I believe it was after the Bickering Bill thing, started inviting the players back to his house after every home game to make it a sense of family and commitment. And you could slowly start seeing Jim change as a person. You know, and that was another thing that we start thinking of him as our extended family, because you see these guys and you know, and you see them grow. And you know, the thing with Jim, for us, the two of us in our generation, that was the last quarterback I believe that was older than us. You know, like he's like about 5-6 years older than us. Now all we can't relate to Josh in the same way. Putting it that way, you know, Josh could be our son. You know, but Jim Kelly could have been our brother.
Right. And you know, he was a guy, like we said, who didn't want to come here, who had a big ego, coming out of the University of Miami at the time, a great football program, and he didn't want to be stuck in the small market Buffalo. And the irony is, all these years later, a man who's had the opportunity to move away for decades and live anywhere in the world, he chooses to stay here. And he's one of the elder statesmen of our community.
And we've shared so much with him and his family over the years. After he retired, and he, you know, he had his son Hunter, who everyone knows, you know, had that horrible disease and ended up passing away. And that's really when you saw Jim Kelly come out to be the person we know him as today. He gave a great speech at the stadium, the last game played at the stadium this past season, and again got me very emotional. So great time. And this guy right here, number 12, the Warriors jersey just for that. You know, we give all the talk and the great talk about Josh Allen, well deserved, but in my mind, until Josh gets to that Super Bowl, wins the Super Bowl, this is the best quarterback that's ever played for our franchise. Josh may be the better athlete, but Jimbo, in my mind, is still the best quarterback.
He was not the most mobile guy in the world. Along the lines of Dan Marino. At that time,
he was the toughest.
It was to stand in the pocket and throw the ball down the field. But he would take hits that were just jarring to watch, pop right up, and get back under center.
Well, back in those days, too, they get concussion and they didn't even leave the game.
And, you know, the protection by the rules was not there for quarterbacks.
Right, it was a different game.
Now. And he was, I think it's safe to say, one of the toughest quarterbacks ever.
Well, they always said linebacker and quarterback position.
One of the toughest guys ever to line up by the center.
Well, 91 starts off, I thought they were even a better team in 91 going. They were just killing teams. There was a game against Pittsburgh. I remember they just blew them out. Don Beebe has 4 touchdowns in that game. Jimbo throws for well over 300 yards, you know, and they were doing that on a fairly consistent basis in 91. Again, finishing 13-3. And, you know, it looks like we play a Kansas City team in the divisional round, and we pretty much blow them out.
Joe Montana.
No, that was the game the year before.
Oh, the year
that
before
was
that.
2 years
Sorry,
before.
you're
2 years
2 years
before
before.
Joe
Jeez.
Montana. It was Steve DeBerg.
Steve DeBerg.
Was quarterback, and we just blew them out.
Yeah.
And then the AFC Championship, we played Denver, and that was kind of when it seemed the K-gun got exposed a little bit.
It was a funny game. I was in the stands for that. That was an odd game to watch. It was
The defense scores
the defense scored the only touchdown. It was a real defensive battle, but everyone at the end was obviously happy with the outcome.
We're going to
It was
Super
sending
Bowl.
it to another Super Bowl.
Like 10-7 that game,
Yeah.
and you could see a little bit of the cracks with the K-gun with that game. They got exposed a little, and then they go to Minnesota, and you were at that game. You
I
said,
was
right?
at that game.
Yeah, and
Not pleasant.
the Redskins just blew them out, and I believe Steve Tasker went on the record saying that was the greatest team that he ever played, and it's unbelievable. Mark Rippon
Yeah.
is their quarterback.
Well, they had that
but they were stacked.
that front line, the Hogs in Griffin, or John Riggins, and they were just manhandling the Bills line and
Beating up the receivers
beating
too.
up the receivers. We just couldn't get anything going against that Redskins team. And again, Mark Rippon, probably the most unheralded Super Bowl winner of any quarterback ever.
Yeah, him and Trent Dilfer maybe.
He didn't have to do much,
Right.
and it was a game that the Bills just were never really in. It was 24-3 at the half. I remember being, in Minneapolis. It was cold. The Metrodome was not the most welcoming venue in the world, and it was just kind of a miserable experience for Bills fans in that stadium, to say the least.
Well, the thing that's most remembered in that is that Thurman forgets his helmet on the sidelines and isn't there for the opening play of the game. And then there's a famous shot of Andre throwing his helmet because he was frustrated that he wasn't getting any calls. He was getting mugged by the cornerbacks and safeties the entire game. But they get handed. I remember Jimbo getting knocked out of the game, and he had to be concussed, and he didn't know where he was, but he didn't want to leave the game, and they had to force him to leave. So a great season again in '91, but ends really badly.
Yeah.
And that brings us to '92, which was a funny season. We don't win the division that year. We end up going 11-5, and some great games. But Jimbo gets hurt again in a game against Houston, and that was right before the season ends, and we have to go and play Houston in Buffalo in wild card game, and of course probably the most famous game in Buffalo Bills history, the greatest comeback of all time. Yeah. We're down, Now, I'm not at that game. There's a million people say there's 70,000. That game didn't sell out. I ended up having to go to Cleveland to my sister's house to watch the game because it wasn't on television here in Buffalo because it didn't sell out.
I watched a pirated broadcast in a local tavern. That's when the bars would risk
losing
closure,
the bar.
But to watch the game, and I remember watching the game at a bar on Military Road, and we stayed. People were pretty much, to be honest with you, checked out of that game. It was more or less just people, turning from the screen and in this venue I was at and having some beers and enjoying and being with each other. But then things started to change.
Well, I remember halftime. I remember being in Cleveland. At halftime, we're my brother-in-law, my sister, and we're like, "Hey, it was a hell of a run."
Yeah.
But obviously, it's over. And believe it or not, my sister gave me a haircut at halftime. Yeah. I don't know. I haven't had one of those since.
It's still stuck.
It's stuck. And the second half starts off pick six. Frank Reich throws a pick six, and it's 35-3, and the game is over. And the Bills get the ball, and I remember Kenny Davis scoring the touchdown and make it 35-10, and I just make a joke. Well, we're about to see the greatest comeback in history, and my brother-in-law is like, laughing. And then things start happening. We get a onside kick, I believe, and then the controversial catch, Don Beebe, where some people say he was out of bounds. He probably was, but I don't see it that way. And it's all of a sudden 35-17. The Bills get an interception, and Andre gets a touchdown, and it's 35-24, and we're like, holy smokes.
Yeah.
My brother-in-law's neighbor starts running from across the street, just opening the front door going, ah! Just scream, and then runs back to his house again.
Yeah.
We just start seeing it happen. They start scoring, the momentum that you could see it in the stadium. You see Jimbo, the pictures of Jimbo on the sideline, and Cornelius Bennett was hurt in that game.
Yeah.
And Thurman got hurt in the first half and didn't play in the second half. A lot of people forget that.
Yeah.
And that amazing comeback. They go on to take the lead 38-35. Houston kicks a field goal to tie it. Goes into overtime. Nate Odoms gets the interception. And Steve Christie kicks the winning field goal. God, Tommy, what a game.
It was a great game. And, again, there was probably 40,000 people maybe in the stadium at the end of the game. And today there's approximately 2.3 million people in the area that claim that they were there.
Yeah, right. I taped it on VHS at the time, and then I bought the Bills released like a 45-minute version of the game on NFL Films with Van Miller doing the play-by-play. And then eventually I even bought the DVD when it came out of the greatest games of all time, NFL series. I think I probably watched that game more than any game. And I've probably seen that game. I usually skip to the second half.
Yeah.
But I've probably seen that like 50 times.
Yeah.
Like I've watched it over and over and over again. Just an incredible game. And, to move on, Jimbo's still hurt. And they go on to the divisional round the next week, and people forget because, everything that happens. They went into Pittsburgh and destroy Pittsburgh like 24-3, I think it was the final score, to move on to the AFC Championship game against Miami.
In Miami.
And Jimbo comes back for that game. And another matchup against Dan Marino, and we pretty much dominate that game in Miami.
Yeah, I remember before that game, the Buffalo News had printed an editorial that had been published in the Miami Herald, where the Miami sports writers basically mocked the Bills, mocked the city, and said, "Get ready for defeat because Dan Marino and the Dolphins, you're coming into Miami and you're going to get pounded." And I remember the Buffalo News printing that editorial in the front page of the Buffalo News. And boy, did those sports writers end up eating their words.
Yeah, no, great game. But then we go into the Super Bowl against Dallas, and at the time we thought it was a good matchup because Dallas was a young team; they weren't the dynasty yet, and we're thinking this is a good matchup. We have this experience, and Buffalo scores first. I believe Tasker blocked another kick, and we get the ball, and we're up 7-0, and thinking, all right, this is our year. Yeah. And then the game, Kelly gets hurt again, I remember
got away real quick.
The turnovers. I think it was a record amount of turnovers in that game, and I just remember Jimmy Johnson at halftime. A reporter says, "Well, this was a team that had the greatest comeback in NFL history," and Johnson just looked into the camera and said, "We ain't Houston." And sure enough, it was the lopsided game, probably the most famous play for Buffalo as far as that is concerned is Don Beebe. Yeah. What was that guy for Dallas's name again? Do you remember the defensive? I can't remember. He made another blunder the next season against Miami too, where he fumbled the ball in a crucial game. Leon Lett is gonna picks up a fumble and is gonna return the thing for a touchdown, and Don Beebe doesn't give up and slaps the ball out of his hands for a touchback. Yeah. That's about the only thing we could hold our hat.
There was a tough. I was at that game also. That was in Pasadena. It was a lot of fun to be, in that stadium.
In California. Yeah.
But that game was over fairly early. Michael Jackson was a halftime show, and by the time the MJ took the stage, it was a foregone conclusion.
Yeah, it was over. Yeah. Well, 93 happens, and again, the team is still dominant. They have another 13-3 season, and this is looking at a point now like it's got to happen, right?
Yeah,
it's got to happen. They just play again some just great games in 93, and Jimbo has a great season. Thurman has a great season. It's looking good. We have home field advantage again. We win the AFC East again, and it's looking great. And AFC divisional game, we meet Jeff Hostetler one more time. This time he's on the Raiders, and it's one of the coldest games I've ever been to in my life. I don't think until a playoff game against New England a couple years back, I don't know if I've been as cold in that stadium as I was that game.
I was
against
at
the
that
Raiders.
game also, and that was a bitterly cold game. But it did not stop us from getting to the parking lot about 3 hours.
Oh no! We were, of course, you got to tailgate, man. But a great victory,
Yep.
and then it was the '93 season. We played Joe Montana in the AFC Championship game, and Bruce and Cornelius knock him for a loop, knock him out of the game, and we win. I think that was one of Thurman's best games as a Buffalo Bill.
Yeah.
He was just running all over that team.
31-13 or something.
31-13, and I believe he scored, if not four, at least 3 touchdowns. I believe he may have scored 4 touchdowns, Thurman, in that game. But he just had a monster game. And we're on, the rest of the country didn't want us. And I remember Thurman and them, famously saying, "We're back," and
Deal with
it,
Yeah.
America. And it's a rematch against the Dallas Cowboys. And we're up 13-6 at halftime.
I was at that game also.
Well, here's the thing. Tom is not allowed to go to the Super Bowl. If we ever go to the Super Bowl again,
I'm staying home.
I promise you I will tie him up and make sure that he cannot leave the basement.
That was a fun game. There was Atlanta. Of the 4 Super Bowls, the 3 that I attended, that was probably the best experience I had ever had at a game. Anyhow, it was a fun game. They were up at the halftime, and I remember during the halftime, we were standing around and thinking,
We're going to win.
Is it? We are going to win this game.
Do you remember Thurman fumbled the ball in the first half, and he just went, "It's on me," and that, and everything was, we come back, we're up 13-6 at halftime, and it's looking good. Second half opens up, Thurman fumbles, and it's returned for a touchdown, and the team collapsed.
Yeah, we were not far behind the. We had good seats for that game, so we were only about 15 yards right above the Bills' sideline, and you could literally feel the energy in the air just come out of that team. It was almost palpable in the air. And I remember sitting there and thinking, looking at the dejected, manner the players were standing on the sideline and thinking, we're going to lose this game.
Yeah.
And they did.
And looking back now, you think you're over all this stuff, and just talking, rehashing this now, I start feeling those same feelings again. I don't know if it's the pressure of they went to 4 in a row, and here they're up, and now this.
I think that's exactly what it was.
And they just buckled under that pressure, saying, "Oh my God, we're going to lose a fourth one."
Yeah.
I do remember, my love for the Buffalo Bills started with my dad taking me in 1972 to my first game, and my dad unfortunately had cancer, and it was discovered right before that Super Bowl. He lived until he lived to see Jimbo retire, and died in 1997. But I knew what that team meant to my dad. He had seen the championships of the 1960s, the 64-65 team, but he really wanted to see that Super Bowl. And I remember the look on his face, seeing that and knowing the condition he had, having cancer, and knowing I'm never going to see it. I'm never going to see that champion. And the look, I take that even more so than the disappointment on the players' faces. I think of my dad and the look on his face, And I have talks with my son, to this day, as the circle of life continues. And my son tells me, like when every year we don't make the Super Bowl with Josh Allen, my son says to me, "Dad, I just want to see them win a Super Bowl for you."
Right. Yeah.
And that's the way I was with my dad. And that's the thing, Tommy, when we talk about our Bills, when we talk about our Sabres, and the reason we do these shows is that it means so much to the community, these teams. This is a tough town to live in. We have winter for 4 months out of the year. We have beautiful summers, but we have, it's not this huge booming economy. It's a blue-collar town. We don't have a lot to hang our hats on, in that, but we have our sports teams, and it's a time when you see the entire community of Western New York become one. We can be divided by politics, we can be divided by family issues, but we come together for our Bills and for our Sabres, and that's that look on my dad's face, and my son saying that to me. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, and Whole Springs Eternal, and but those were years that people who were fortunate to live through them will never forget them. I remember during those years, they would play the commercial on television, and they would play the song "Glory Days,"
Yeah.
the great Bruce Springsteen song, because at the time we knew we were living through.
Yeah,
Glory
you
Days.
knew as it was happening.
It was one of
It
the
was magic.
It was one of the great teams in NFL history. I think anyone will acknowledge that. Win or lose a Super Bowl, it was a great team that won a lot of really exciting games, beat
Right.
a lot of great teams, and it just unfortunately fell short. But I think that as we've gotten that distance between now and then, hindsight's 2020.
Their greatness comes out.
And the greatness comes out, and we can look not as much with the bitterness at the 4 losses, but with the gratitude that we're able to see those teams across that span.
Well, Jim Kelly, again, wearing his jersey proudly. I don't know if he gets recognized as much as he should. When they talk about the all-time great quarterbacks, his name doesn't come in the top 10 or whatever, but he did something no other quarterback ever did, leading a team to Super Bowl 4 years in a row. And I kind of look like the Dolphins, probably the fans look at whenever a team loses a game when they're undefeated and say, oh, our record is still there. I felt that this year, like when Kansas City, would have gone to 4 Super Bowls this year if they would have gone this year. Mm-hmm. And when they got knocked out of the playoffs, and I was like, Jimbo, they still reign.
Yeah.
We see magic in our team now with Josh Allen. We have that excitement. But here's the thing. He hasn't gotten over that hump to that Super Bowl yet. That team in the 1990s did. They did something that this team has not been able to do since. And even though they lost those 4 games, it's those years, not even 90 to 93, but I would say 87 to 96.
Yeah.
Those 10 seasons, I would never give them up. I don't know if I would trade. We win 1 Super Bowl, but we never go back again, and Jim Kelly goes on to a different team. I wouldn't take that.
Yeah.
For the 10 years, those seasons, and when Jimbo got knocked out of that playoff game against the Jags in '96, it would end up being his final game. How else would that guy have ended his NFL career but having to be carried off the field?
I remember I was at that game, and I remember when he was going off and just sitting there and thinking, this is the end of something special. We knew that was the end of the road for him and for the team, really, because they never really went anywhere after that.
Well, they had 98 and 99 with Flutie, and Thurman and Bruce, and their legacy ended in that Nashville game against Tennessee Titans. In the 99 playoffs would be the end of Bruce and Thurman and Andre as far as being Buffalo Bills. And that was the end of that legacy. Yeah. But what a legacy and what a time, Tom. You want to finish up with any final thoughts?
I just think that, like I said, unfortunately, younger Bills fans have not been able to experience that level of success. They have been gifted with the opportunity to watch Josh Allen. And that in itself, I think, is something that the fans of today who weren't around then will be able to look at and say, I saw who I think is one of the all-time greats in Josh Allen. But unfortunately, the team around him, we haven't seen a team built around him the way that Polian was able to build a team around Kelly in those years.
Well, here's the good news, though, is that career isn't over yet.
Right.
And I think we're going to see it happen. As you say, hope springs eternal, but as long as you have number 17 on your team, you're in the running. Yeah. And I think we're about to see, with the new stadium, with the new coach, a new direction. I think that we're going to see the next step happen. I say that every year.
Yeah.
But so we'll have to see. But that's what being a fan's all about.
That's right.
That's what this channel's all about.
Yeah.
So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of Let's Talk. We had a great time doing it.
Yep. A lot of great memories coming
Give us a comment below. Let us know what your memories of those great teams were. What maybe some of your favorite games were in that period. And thanks for watching. Subscribe to the channel. Hit that bell icon. Get notified when we upload all of our videos. Again, leave a comment. And thanks for watching, guys. Next week, tell them what the next Let's Talk episode is going to
Next
be
week, we're
about.
going to look at the career of the greatest stuntman ever to live, and that is the one and only Evel Knievel.
Evel Knievel. Can't wait. We'll see you next week, guys. But until then, go Bills, go Sabres, go Buffalo, and go USA.
Yeah.